Welcome back to Mr. Orr's Flip Classroom for Grammar. This chapter is going to look at different kinds of phrases used in sentences, starting with prepositional phrases. First, a preposition is a word that shows position or relationship. This must be followed by a noun or pronoun. This noun or pronoun which follows the preposition is called the object of the preposition because it completes the thought started by the preposition. It might be fairly obvious, but prepositional phrases are those phrases, groups of words that incorporate or do the job of a preposition, therefore showing position or relationship. There are two types. First is an adjective phrase. An adjective phrase, not surprisingly, is a phrase that takes a prepositional phrase which modifies or describes a noun or pronoun, whereas an adverb phrase is a prepositional phrase that modifies or describes a verb, adjective, or other adverb. Might not be a bad idea to revisit your notes for adjectives and adverbs, especially in terms of how do you determine whether a describing word is going to be an adjective or whether it's going to be an adverb. Simply put, once you find a prepositional phrase, then you go ahead and just use your rules and steps for figuring out whether it's an adjective or an adverb to determine which one it might be. There are over 50 prepositions in the English language, but in terms of how many you need to actually actively remember, I recommend about 5 to 7. In this case, some of the common examples used frequently are to, with only one O, from, with, for, of, and then you get into some opposites like above and below and in and out. You do need to be aware that some prepositions can be used as adverbs, if it's not followed by an object preposition. So be mindful of that. How do we find them? Well, first always find the verbs and subjects. Then, using the prepositions on the list, find the ones in the sentence. Bear in mind that if they're not on the list, if there's prepositions, they're still replaceable. Again, with my analogy that grammar is like algebra. Another way to remember prepositions is to use this simple mnemonic device. I threw the ball, blank, you. Pretty much any word you can put in that blank and it works grammatically is going to be a preposition. I threw the ball to you, threw the ball for you, threw the ball with you, threw the ball around you, above you, below you, behind you, beside you, between you. All different types of words you can put that. Again, if it's followed by that you, in this case a sentence, meaning the object of that preposition finishing the thought, that's going to be a preposition. So you can always test using that. Make sure you find that noun or pronoun following the preposition. It's an object. Bear in mind in formal English, you cannot end a sentence with a preposition. You have to have an object to finish that thought. If you're being asked to determine whether it's an adjective or adverb phrase, then you want to make sure you don't skip the step of number 4. Remember, if there's no object to the preposition, then the word likely is being used as an adverb, or it's incorrect grammar. First, you want to remember to place the prepositional phrase as close as possible to the word modified. Why is that important? Well, for one thing, if you're being asked to determine adjective or adverb, putting it next to that word and saying which word in a sentence can't be taken out, otherwise the phrase loses its meaning. That's the word it's describing. If that word is a noun or pronoun, then you have an adjective phrase. If the word is a verb, an adjective, or another adverb, then you have an adverb phrase. Also for placement, if the word to be modified is first in the sentence, it's very common to go ahead and put the prepositional phrase at the beginning of the sentence, followed by a comma. You can still put it after the first word, but if it's the first word in a sentence specifically, it's a good idea to put that up front, followed by a comma, as a way of getting some sentence variety. Otherwise, generally speaking, in a sentence, put the prepositional phrase after the word it's describing. This will be confusing if you have a series of phrases, but that's why it's important to have the sequence of those phrases, the order you put them in very precisely determined. Here's an example with lots of phrases in them. For my birthday, some of my students snuck into my classroom and put 40 of something on each desk. What are the verbs? The verbs are snuck and put, so we do have a compound predicate here, joined by and. Who or what snuck and put? Some. Initially, it may have been students, but it's actually some. That's the simple subject because of my students' prepositional phrase, as we'll see in a moment. Okay, starting with the phrases. For my birthday describes why for the verb snuck and put. So it explains why they did these things. And if it explains why, it's going to be an adverb phrase. Of my students describes the who. In this case, the pronoun some. It's describing a pronoun, therefore it's an adjective phrase. Into my classroom describes where they snuck. So it's where, it's also describing the verb, which makes it an adverb phrase. Of something describes the amount 40. In this case, 40 is going to be used essentially as a noun. So therefore, it's an adjective for the phrase of something. On each desk describes where they put. So it's a where and also goes to a verb, which means it's an adverb. This might be a little bit much for some of you who haven't studied this content in the past. You might be wise to go ahead and watch this video twice, as well as mark up the ones you're not sure about and ask lots of questions when you get to your time with the teacher. Good hunting.